So far this year, there's been 41 of these cars listed for sale, and half of those did not sell because they did not meet the reserve price. The auction sites can't even keep up with them at this point because the prices are dropping so fast. If there's car flippers out there that have one of these cars right now, they're going to lose their shorts. Today we're going to take a look at 3 modern examples of the classic American muscle car. All of them have slightly different purposes, but all of them come with supercharged V8s. We know the car dealerships were charging top dollar for these when they were new, but the real question is what's happening on the used market today? And is there a deal out there? Stick around and we're going to go through all that and more. First, let's go over some basics on the cars. Starting things off with the Chevrolet Camaro ZL1, in its latest generation, it came out with a 6.2 liter supercharged engine. These made 650 pound-feet of torque as well as 650 horsepower. This car weighed in at about 3,900 pounds, and it was the more track-focused of the 3 cars that we're going to go over today. The ZL1 came with some great performance upgrades, which included some magnetic ride suspension, Brembo brakes, and then some bodywork that was a little bit aero-focused. This all made it better for a street performance or a track performance type car. The ZL1 was also the focus of the Garage 56 NASCAR entry into the 24-hour Le Mans race that happened this year, if you were watching that. They are even making a Garage 56 version of the ZL1 to sell to the consumers as one of the latest additions that's going to come out at the end of the production cycle. Towards that end, this is the end of the production cycle, and this is going to be the end of the Camaro, at least for the foreseeable future. I'm sure the Camaro will be back for a 7th generation. We just don't know when that'll be or what it'll look like or if it'll be electrified or who knows at this point. GM has said that it's not the end of the Camaro's story, so whatever that means.
It's a mystery to me.
Next up for the American muscle cars that we're going to take a look at today is going to be the Dodge Challenger. Now this comes in a lot of different variations, but we're going to focus on the performance side of it. So we're going to start with the Hellcat and go up from there. So we have, after the Hellcat, we have Demon and Redeye and Jailbreak and probably a couple other variations of those cars. Just like our Camaro ZL1, the Dodge Hellcat and beyond, if you will, are all powered by a 6.2 liter supercharged V8 engine. In its lowest configuration that we're going to look at today, it made 707 horsepower, and then it goes all the way up to 807 horsepower. MSRP on this car started out around the 60s and then worked themselves well north of $100,000 with some of the special editions. Weighing in around 4,500 pounds, this car is far from nimble, but that wasn't the point of this car. The Hellcat is all about straight line speed. It's got the retro styling as well as abundant power, and the Challenger, Hellcat, and beyond, if you will, is the embodiment of the classic American muscle car. Filling the gap between the ZL1 and the Hellcat, we have the GT500, and it's in the middle from a lot of standpoints, so let's go over the specs on this. In 2021, the MSRP on the GT500 started out around $71,000, and it's worked its way well north of $100,000, just like on the Hellcat versions. There was a carbon fiber track pack as well as other versions that went over the $100,000 mark. The Predator engine that went into the GT500 was a 5.2 liter, so 1 liter lower than the other two. It was a 5.2 liter supercharged V8 that made 760 horsepower and 625 pound-feet of torque. So a little bit less torque than the ZL1 and quite a bit less than the Hellcat in its higher versions. This car only comes with a 7-speed dual clutch transmission, and it weighs in at about 4,200 pounds, if you will, so it kind of fits in that nice niche between the Camaro and the Hellcat. It was billed per Ford as the ultimate driving experience for someone who wants power and acceleration. And we don't know when this car is going to come back because the production cycle is ending, and I hope it comes back more powerful and with a standard transmission. So that's our collection of our modern example of the classic American muscle car, and we'll have our electrified friends telling us how they can go faster to 0 to 60 or whatever the case may be in their model, whatever.
Want to be replaced by golf carts? Just keep it up.
But the true connection to these cars and the feeling that you get from these cars is from the moment that you start them up and you're driving them, whether it be cruising on a road or tearing up the racetrack. And so these cars offer a little bit more of a connection from that perspective. If you're enjoying this content, please hit the thumbs up down below as well as subscribe to the channel so you get future updates. Now we're going to move straight into the sales of these cars and see what the sales are looking like, if they're dropping or if there's any deals out there. All right, we're going to take a look at the Camaro ZL1 first. One thing of note on this is I'm going to go over a couple auctions, individual auctions, so we can take a look at what's happening with them. And then we're going to look at the overall sales trends. So we'll just jump right in here to the auctions. Now, first I'm showing you cars and bids, and you can see that there's 20 sales that have happened on cars and bids for ZL1s. This is including the previous generation as well, but nonetheless, there's more ZL1 auctions that have happened on cars and bids than have happened on Bring a Trailer, and that's a little bit anomalous, and we'll just keep that in mind. Normally, there's about 10 times as much from a sales perspective on Bring a Trailer than there is on cars and bids, but not in the ZL1's case. So we're going to take a look at this first car right here, which is this 2019 ZL1. So you can see this sold for $61,000. The person would have had to pay another like $2,500 on top of that for buyer's commission, and so that would have brought it to the mid 60s. And this one had an MSRP that was probably around the high 60s when it was sold originally in 2019. This car had 20,000 miles on it, and it was in pretty good shape, and it didn't have any crashes or wrecks or anything like that. So this was selling underneath MSRP just by a little bit. All right, now we're going to take a look at another car that's over on Bring a Trailer. So we'll move over to this. As you can see, this is only a 3,900 mile car from 2018, and so this car was highly optioned. It had a MSRP that was around $73,000, and mainly because it had this 1 LE Extreme Track Performance package. So this is interesting. So these cars are going anywhere from the 40s to the 50s, and so as you can see, this one sold for $57,000 in the auction, which with buyer's fees was about 60 grand. With delivery miles are getting almost close to MSRP, and when I say delivery miles, I mean like 200-300 miles type of thing, or less. Anyhow, at $57,000, this is a lot of car for the money. These cars are selling in the 40s and the 50s right now, so you can get a pretty decent deal on these. If they have a little bit of mileage on them, get them around 40 grand, and that's a lot of car for the money. So if you're not wanting to participate in the C8 market as it is today, and you want that bow tie, the Camaro ZL1 is probably the way to go. You get more horsepower as well. All right, now let's take a look at the sales chart on these cars and see what's going on there. So I'm sorry for the crude additions to this chart. So the red dots are sales from cars and bids. And so I just wanted to merge the two just so you'd have a visual view of what the sales looked like on these cars. And so there's a couple things that are interesting to me. Pre-2020, when you get back here or close to 2020, these cars were destined to go into the 40s for resale, and you can kind of see how that was happening, going all the way into just before 2021. And so that was interesting. Then the sales picked up dramatically, and they spiked in late 2022, and they're now starting to fall again. If you look at this little trend here, you can see how the prices are starting to come down as well. So I think if you can wait a little bit, I'd guess you could probably get a better deal even in the low 50s. These are great cars, and you'd be hard pressed to get more car for your money than the Camaro ZL1 right now. All right, so now we're going to get into some of the individual sales of these Dodge Hellcats and beyond, if you will. First thing we're going to start off with is I'm going to tease you with this chart. We're going to come back to that. So let's cruise down here and take a look at the disparity of pricing of the Dodge Hellcat and beyond. So we see that a Hellcat here just sold the other day for $55,000. Low mileage example as well, only 11,000 miles. And so that is one. And then you can see a Demon here that only had 26 miles, and it goes for $171,000. So people lost their mind on that. 4,000 mile one went for 121,000. So I don't see how 4,000 miles equals 50 grand, but to somebody it does. Nonetheless, there's a big disparity here. And so I wanted to go over that before we go back to the chart, just because you're just going to see a wide range of pricing. Now that we go back to this chart, what I wanted to focus in on is, so one thing we need to remember is these solid black dots are for sold cars, and they represent sales that actually happened, and the open dots are when the reserve isn't met. And so what we see on this chart, or what I see on this chart, is I see a decline in pricing. You can see how the group is coming down, but I also see a whole lot of these white dots, the open dots. And so those open dots again mean that the sale did not happen and that the car did not make the reserve. And so it's really interesting to me, basically in 2023, 50%, I ran the math on this. It was 19 out of like 41 cars that have sold this year. So 19 of them didn't sell. So basically 50% of all cars that are coming up for auction that are a Dodge Hellcat or beyond are not selling. So why is that? The reason is because the prices are falling so fast that they're not accommodating for the reserve price drop. And so the reserve price is too high. People are not willing to bid up to it, and they're not selling. And so that happens in markets where prices drop really fast. We've seen it in the C8 market. It's happening here as well. The demons and the jailbreak last call are the ones that are getting the top dollars. So we'll just keep that in mind. Now we're going to move on to the GT500 sales and take a look at what's happening there. And is it doing similar things to either the Camaro, which is dropping down but slowly, and the Hellcats, which are dropping down really fast right now. GT500 sales, where have they been? These are more in line with, I'd say, the average cars on the auction sites, whereas the Hellcat was significantly below the average, where half of them aren't selling and the price is dropping really fast. GT500 seems to be maintaining. I'm going to switch over to the chart just so you can kind of see this chart, and we'll take a look at it. And you can see how the prices are really gathered in here. Now, one thing to keep in mind on the GT500 is they have the Heritage Edition as well as the carbon fiber track pack, and the MSRP on those are north of $100,000. And so that's different than the base GT500 where the MSRP is around 70. And so I'm going to show you some of that. Basically, all of these that are up here in the higher range, Heritage Edition, carbon fiber track pack, Heritage Edition. So you kind of get the gist of it. This upper group is all of the limited editions or extremely low mileage. When we start going to the lower ones, even when they're low mileage, they're not the Heritage or the carbon fiber track pack, and the prices are dropping down into the 80s and 70s. And so these are coming down, but they're not coming down fast. And you can kind of see how they're starting to decline. If you were to look at this like a stock chart, you notice that this is the higher area is starting to decline, and the base is kind of staying stable. It goes all the way back to 21. So it looks like the prices are kind of condensing on the GT500s. Looking at these cars, I think there's a few things that we can conclude, and we can answer our original questions about how they're selling. I think we kind of answered that going through the individual cars. But the other question that we haven't answered is there a bargain out there today? Obviously, bargain is a subjective term, but if we look at these three cars and we take a look at the pricing and that kind of thing, I think that the Camaro ZL1 is the best opportunity for a bargain. If you were in the market for it and you could find one that was around the 40s that might have a little bit of mileage on it, I would probably consider that a bargain at this point in time. I tend to side with more of a track-focused car, and that's probably why I come up with the Camaro ZL1 in this argument. But from a pricing perspective, looking at the charts, I think that the Camaro offers a better bargain in today's market. Now, I think that the Hellcat probably will in the future. The prices are dropping so fast on those right now that if you just wait that out a little bit, you'll probably be able to pick up a bargain in the not too distant future. But I'd let that settle first. The GT500 prices are mostly stable, and they're not fluctuating greatly. So if you do get into one of those, I think that you'll be able to maintain some value. It looks like they're falling and kind of condensing a little bit lower, but that's normal car depreciation, if you will. In the end, most people are going to be drawn to one of these cars, whether it be due to brand loyalty or that it's a little bit more in line with their taste, whether it be track focused or quarter mile focused. And so you're going to be drawn towards those for those reasons. For me, I always try to look at where the value and performance is coming from, and right now, for me, it's the ZL1. But in the not too distant future, it may be the Hellcat because those prices have dropped significantly. Which one is the one that you're really looking into, and are any of these cars in line for your next car? I want to thank you for joining me today, and if you enjoyed this content, please give me a thumbs up below, as well as hit the subscribe button so that you get notifications for community polls as well as future content when it comes out. With that, I hope you have a great week, and I'll see you in the next one.